Hey guys, we are three of four unqualified film bros here tonight. Deqlin is taking the week off. He had too much fun in the 50th episode, Build a Movie Marathon Draft, so we're letting him take a breather. The rest of us powering through. We are talking about the new David O. Russell film. That's David O. Period Russell, not David O. Apostrophe Russell. We're talking about an Irish movie in a couple of weeks. We're not going to spoil what that is, though you can probably guess. Today we're talking about Amsterdam. Ben and I are once again polar opposites on this. I haven't heard a lick of what Max thought of it. So, Max, why don't we start with you this week?
Oh goodness. Well, see,
What'd
now
you
I'm
guys
curious.
think? Sorry, I didn't get that in there.
No, it's okay. Now
Hold,
I'm
hold on.
curious
I
about what
did
you
want to
guys
start
think.
off before we get into the movie. I think this we all should talk about, which is
David O.
Hollywood
Russell.
has made a big deal about Me Too. This is a big, I mean, it's $80 million budget. They got all of these fantastic actors to be in it. David O. Russell has admitted to being a creep, essentially. So it's interesting that this movie got made.
I think
Which
it's
is
interesting that
also,
this movie got finished and didn't replace its director.
yeah,
Because, like, you see a movie like Bohemian Rhapsody a couple of years ago, Bryan Singer isn't exactly the most upstanding of gentlemen.
yeah.
He was replaced on the project, still credited as the director, but he was replaced on the project. Don't see that with David O. Russell for Amsterdam.
And
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure this was known before this
it
movie
definitely
ever
was.
started
Well, he hasn't made a
showing.
movie since Joy 7 years ago.
Yeah.
That's
So
true.
it was definitely known. So it did sort of make me not want to enjoy this movie as much. But I did give it a fair shot. My criticisms are towards the movie. So without further ado, let's get into the meat. I had to make that notice just because I feel like it
Well
would be
said, Benjamin.
awkward before or
Well
later.
said.
No, that's more than fair. That's more than fair game. I mean, I think
Worth
we'd be
noting.
irresponsible to not talk about it, right? I
Mhm.
mean, when we review The Flash in whenever that comes out, whether it's
June of
next
next
year
year.
Yep.
or it gets pushed
Tentatively
back by
June of next year.
6 more years, who knows? At this point. I know we're
All
going
I'm
to be
saying
talking
is,
about Ezra Miller.
with as many times as that movie has been pushed back, it had better be the greatest superhero movie there's ever been. Maybe even the greatest movie there's ever been.
It's the
Because
movie to end all movies.
It might
why
be.
would Warner Brothers keep pushing it and pushing it? Is it just because of Keaton? Because we know he's coming. We know he's in the movie.
I have no idea what to expect, but
All right, Max, Amsterdam. I'm sorry for you
It's
sent me off on a
okay.
tangent.
I mean, yeah, but like I said, we have to talk about stuff outside of movies too sometimes. This is definitely one of those instances. But diving into the movie finally. Yeah, I mean, obviously a great cast. Ben and I got to catch up a little bit last night, so he knows more of my thoughts than George does, which is historical. Um, I think we were both in kind of agreement that this is a stacked cast, but it left a lot to be desired. There was a lot of potential that was left out on the table. Whether it was in the way that the story progressed or didn't progress, or just in the performances too, right? John David Washington, we felt was outmatched by Christian Bale and Margot Robbie. Not saying that he's a bad actor, but when you're up again, well, when you're starring alongside heavyweights like that, it's kind of hard to make your presence known.
my opinion is
But
he is a good actor, not a great actor.
sure, yeah. But I mean, overall, it was fine. I enjoyed it for the film that it was. But definitely thought that there was some more out there that I think could have been explored. And I know we'll talk about the history and the accuracy of the historical accuracy of the film too. So I won't jump too far ahead, but yeah.
Yeah, I'll start just with like Max did, just with the movie itself, rather than what history it ties to. I
And we'll
felt,
get into that.
yeah, they're like Max said, this great cast. However, there are issues with that, which is, like Max said, John David Washington is not up for being one of the three amigos in this role. Michael B. Jordan was originally supposed to play the role, and I think he is a better actor. He probably could have done the role the gravitas needs, because you have Margot Robbie and Christian Bale who are phenomenal, and you can see the like subtleties and the emotions. John David Washington is serviceable, but it's tough to get that from him. Then you had, let's see here, Taylor Swift, not an actor, definitely a Harry Styles school of acting.
One quick note on Taylor Swift, and I think I might have mentioned this on the Bullet Train episode, but maybe it was just in my Letterboxd review. Add this to the phenomenal emerging canon of casting pop stars in movies and killing them off within 5 minutes of screen time.
I told Max that scene is definitely going to become a meme. Just
absolutely.
Taylor Swift.
Just one shot of Timothy Olyphant with his hand on Taylor
Yep.
Swift's shoulder and then under the truck.
Yep. Timothy Olyphant. You know what? I'll go with him next. He's a great actor. I literally didn't even know he was in the film because he's literally there for 5 seconds at a time and says nothing other than like "Camilla fast, stay alive" or whatever.
You do a phenomenal impression. No notes.
But there are a bunch of these cast members that are there, and they sort of fit, but there are a few that seem really out of place. One is Chris Rock. I feel like when he's more part of, there are a few lines where he sort of fits in when he's sort of just being a soldier, but too often he seems like he's just Chris Rock in Amsterdam. And with the rest of the film trying to be like this sort of very witty comedy, dark humor, it's really out of place. It's a little jarring. Then there is Robert De Niro is De Niro. I mean, he's pretty much exactly what you'd expect. What was the other big one that I wanted to touch on? Oh yeah, then you have Michael Shannon and Mike Myers, which on paper is a really fun cameo.
Not even a cameo. They're
that's the issue.
Billed higher than half the cast.
That is the issue. Like they don't really fit. I like their characters, but I don't like them in the movie. Like it's just there's too many blends of like awkwardness. Some of the lines feel very awkward. Things don't fit together well in this movie.
Yeah, that's something
bad for something based on like a conspiracy where you're trying to build this up. The conspiracy it's being told way more confusing than it actually is.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to bring up was the dialogue and some of the lines. The screenplay, the actual script and words being said, dialogue, synonyms, were underwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is a great story that can be told in a really fun way. You know, if you choose to go with a dark comedy mystery route, as David O. Russell clearly tried to do here,
yeah,
there's a lot of potential. And I said this when we reviewed Honk for Jesus last month. This film knows where its ceiling is, but it keeps that respectful distance that we've been talking about. Like it knows how funny it can be or how good of a film it can be, and yet it almost feels deliberate to stay one step beneath that. And granted, I'm giving this film 4.5 out of 5 stars. I had so much fun in the theater with my buddy. I rate based on enjoyment, and I enjoyed it.
See, I just couldn't even enjoy it because of how messy it was. There are lots of side plots that seem to like plenty of wasted scenes and
well, that was another issue that I had was the second act pacing. It felt like it was, going. You start out, with the murder of the general's daughter 10 minutes into the movie, we'll say, not even maybe. And then we're into a flashback for the next 15 minutes.
Yeah.
and then we're sort of getting into the characters, and then once we get into like how are they going to get out of this, and going to the Vose house, meeting with Rami Malek, Anya Taylor-Joy, actors that Ben you didn't even get to mention just now.
Oh yeah.
But like
it's too
once
much.
you get into the sort of meat of the story, it almost feels like it's treading water until you get to what I guess was supposed to be a reveal with the connection to the fascist plot to overthrow the United States government and install a puppet dictator of corporate fascists.
Yeah.
So I don't think the reveal worked as well as they wanted it to, and I feel like everything between like the 45-minute mark and the 90-minute mark was paced pretty poorly. But I liked the beginning and I liked the end. And then just one more note on what you were saying, Ben. Tonal shifts. There are a lot of tonal shifts in this movie. It goes from slapstick humor with Christian Bale running around on the floor trying to find his eye,
Yeah.
to dark comedy with Margot Robbie fantasizing about shooting Rami Malek and Anya Taylor-Joy in the face. And Mike Myers and Michael Shannon are they trustworthy? Are they not?
What?
Do we care enough
I just
about them
took
as characters to trust
Austin
them?
Powers.
Well, I
It's
brought
like
that
this
up to my buddy as we were
older.
watching the movie, and anytime Mike Myers has a British accent, it's groovy, baby.
Well,
Yeah, baby.
He's also an MI6 spy though.
Yeah.
And he walks around with these glass eyes. I mean, it was weird to me also that they're going for, I don't know, there was like dark humor, but some of the people just seemed so unreal for something that like was like, oh, most of this actually happened, which again we'll talk about later. I think you can do comedy without making like Remy Malek and Anya Taylor-Joy's character, Tom Vos, and whatever her name was, Val. No, not Valerie. I can't remember her name, but they just seem ridiculous. Like they're not real people.
They almost felt like caricatures by the end of the
And
film.
same with Michael Shannon and Mike Myers, which I don't know. I think it could kind of work, but there's just too much going on. It's like they're trying to do so much with this film.
Do you think some of
Leave.
that, and I'll ask both of you this, do you think some of that comes from overstacking the cast?
Yes,
Like
I
you want
do.
you
Yes.
want to give everybody their
Yeah.
due screen time.
Yes.
You don't give enough time to any one of them. And the scenes are overstuffed with random things because you just want to use the actors more. But they make absolutely there's no reason to have them in the plot. They don't serve the dialogue anything. I mean, it seems like it was a movie that was a lot more fun to film than to watch, at least for me. Because anytime that I felt like I was getting into the film, it would drag me away to like some random subplot for like 5 minutes. And then there would be another one. Or there would be, like a romance. Or yeah, the flashback was really jarring for me because you've just gotten into this conspiracy and then they flash back all the way. It's like, okay, I get it. You want to establish that, but that's a really awkward place to flash back because you want to keep the mystery going. And as soon as they do that, it kills a lot of suspense. I mean, sure, you're still going, but you're not as suspended as you were when Taylor Swift just got run over by a car.
Would it have worked better for you if you open with them meeting at war and then meeting Valerie in the hospital and then, spending all that time in Amsterdam, and then once you're 10-15 minutes in the movie getting into, all right, here's where we are now?
Yeah, I think it would have been fine if they just established like set it up as a flashback, not just to Valerie, but he's working in the shop, working a veterans in the beginning. Why don't you do it then? It makes so much more sense for character development. Instead, you have it here, right after the murder, so it's just jarring. It doesn't fit well. So there's scenes like that, and that's like the extended one, right? That goes on for like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But there's so many scenes like that that I felt like that watching the film, where it's like, okay, and then there would be a random cameo that would come out. There's so many people in here. I didn't even realize we're in this movie because there were so many people in this movie, which can be good sometimes. But oftentimes, yeah, you do get too much. There's too much going on. There's not enough time to breathe, for the plot to breathe. You're just being stuffed with so much all the time. Especially the things that aren't really important to the story at all.
Yeah, I'm convinced Anya Taylor-Joy and Rami Malek were cast for that one scene at the very end of the movie where they do the eye drops that make them like crazy. And it's like, all right, we're gonna cast you
Oh,
because of
that's
your
fast.
eyes.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's fast.
Yeah.
And Christian Bale, he does a great job with this stuff. Even
Christian Bale has so much fun in this movie.
Yeah.
And like you saw that in Thor: Love and Thunder, where, maybe everything around him isn't, as great as we want it to be. Like Amsterdam was one of my like 5 highest anticipated movies for the rest of the year. I said that a couple weeks ago. Or I teased that a couple weeks ago. It's not going to be in my top 5 films at the end of the year. But Christian Bale and Thor: Love and Thunder, another example, was in my top 5 highest anticipated movies for the year back in January. And Christian Bale is the best part of both movies because credit to method acting, credit to what you will, his ability to do accents, whatever. He dives so deep into this character. He becomes Bert in this film that, you just go along with it. And he's having so much fun. So you're having so much fun watching him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's where you really see the John David Washington doesn't really transform into a role like Christian Bale does. So he feels just out of water. I mean,
Yeah.
he's the sort of the same person in every role, which there's plenty of actors like that. There's nothing wrong with that, but
Then when you've got someone who's completely different in every role, like Christian Bale,
juxtapose them with like this cast, you're doomed to fail.
And Margot Robbie, who's pretty different in every role she takes.
Yeah. Even though she does do the New York accent a lot. But what was the other thing I was going to say?
She does it well. I mean, you could watch this movie, and if you knew nothing about Margot Robbie, you would guess that she's American.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I guess just the movie felt all over the place. And then I'm not really sure what they're trying to do. Like there is a sort of moral line in this movie about, I don't know, powerful men and imperialism, Nazis. And that's a thread throughout the entire film. He keeps trying to make this point, but I don't know what the hell he's trying to say. You're literally talking about like you're bringing up a general, one of the most powerful generals, clearly was in plenty of wars that all of these guys, fought in. I don't know, like the actual meaning here is hitting me in the face, which is that basically this general, sort of his entire life was at the cost of these men who lost their eyes and their limbs and stuff. But he makes no reference to that, which I think is very odd. It's too simplistic and absolute. Like, yeah, Nazis are bad, sure, but you can make a much more interesting theme here if that's what you're trying to do. And if not, why is it in here? Like, it's just another one of those examples of something that it seems like is half finished. It's like, oh, this is a cool thing. I thought about this for 2 seconds, and you wrote some stuff and some lines, narrating throughout the movie about this sort of stuff. But
I did like that the narration shifted between characters, because some of it came from Bert, some of it came from Valerie. I don't remember if there was anyone else, but I remember distinctly those two narrated particular sequences. And I thought, do more of that. throw it around a little bit, see where each character is coming from.
Yeah.
Not every character, because you've got Chris Rock, who we've talked about. You've got Zoe Saldana, who we haven't even mentioned. We've got Rami Malek and Anya Taylor-Joy, Michael Shannon and Mike Myers, Timothy Olyphant, Andrea Riseborough, who we haven't talked about, who was in this movie way more than I thought she would be. Like, you can't hear from everybody, but when you have a concept that works in a film as crowded as this, run with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the narrating is fine, but it's more of the contents of the narration.
Well, it's a crutch for exposition in a lot of cases, and Deqlin isn't here to defend exposition. But
I don't mind it in this case. Like, they narrate all the time in Snatch. It's fine. You can narrate, especially when you have like
Snatch, good movie.
It is a great movie. Complex narratives, it's fine to do narration. It's fine to do narration tons of times. It can be a crutch, but they don't use it that much in this movie, except that they do for some of this stuff, which is like, at the end of the movie, it's like powerful men, never face consequences. It's just got this, what do you call it? Righteous indignation.
Preaching.
Well, also coming from like what we discussed at the top of the episode, coming from David O. Russell.
About that
are you kidding me?
Like,
you're gonna.
This is the most hypocritical bullshit, and instead he chooses to frame like the injuries to the war. We don't really talk about John David Washington's or anybody else. Obviously, there are people that come in, they have wounds, but his wounds, he blames his father-in-law for sending him off the war. When it's like, okay, what regiment did he join in? Who was he serving with? All these black men. I don't think their father-in-laws are sending them off the war. So it's just, it upsetted me, frankly, to have all that in the movie and to not even like make mention of something like that. And to have all those lines like, oh yeah, it's such a shame that you served had to wear French colors or whatever. All these lines about how nobody respected.
That was mentioned a weird amount of times, and I think that weird number was twice. But still, it's weird that it was mentioned twice.
Well, yeah, why are you mentioning this and not mentioning like the effects of war? Like, rather than blaming someone's father-in-law, which I guess is kind of funny, but you do it too much, and they have too much of that emotional strain, which works for his character. But I just feel like when you're using these ideas so much, talk about like the actual facts, especially when you say like most of these events happen.
Well, I agree. I mean,
to that point, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to agree really quickly. It's something that I thought about and is, in the grand scheme of politics, like makes sense, right? In history, we've had military coups that have taken place. Sometimes they center around veterans. I mean, you think about here in the United States, right? There's such reverence for veterans. And there is legitimate concern from law enforcement officials right now that certain veterans that are now further to the right and are sort of becoming radicalized into violence, like that is a very real concern that is permeating throughout law enforcement, and it's due to being slighted. It's due to not being taken care of when you come home. It's due to all of these factors.
Well, that's something we talked about when we talked about Breaking last month.
Yeah. I mean, that's different.
It's a different set of scenarios, absolutely, but the general theme is still there.
I mean, radicalized to the point of not just taking over a bank and holding people hostage, but like trying to overthrow a government, radicalized, like dangerous levels.
Well, to each of your points, why don't we dive into the history here? Like we said we were going to. Obviously, this plot in the early 30s, as two pretty significant European countries were falling under the rule of dictators in Mussolini and Hitler. Sort of a different approach taken maybe by American far right hyper nationalists. But what do you think of this? I don't even want to say the movie's portrayal of the events because we've talked a lot about that. But what do you guys think of these actual events? That a lot of this is true. Well, how much
Uh,
of it is true?
this is absolute bullshit. Like the whole when he starts off the movie saying most of what is displayed here is true, he's saying that about 1% of it is true because almost none of this happened. I researched it. The business plot, really all it was General Smedley, who is the
That's
Dylan Beck.
yeah,
Dylan Beck.
He
Gil.
testified. He testified to a congressional hearing that this guy McGuire approached him about this sort of stuff. But it made no mention actually. Well, the research that I did, he made no mention of like Nazis or the Committee of the Five or anything. There were different, more homegrown, like nationalist groups who were not really connected to Germany because Americans still hated Germans, even if they wanted the same sort of supremacist ideals.
Well, that comes out of World War One.
Yeah.
Those sentiments were still there a decade and a half later.
So that part is just sort of completely invented because it sounds better. Again, to my point, like about war, there's much more interesting things you could have done here. You didn't need to connect it to Nazis because that's not even what happened. And the other thing is, it makes it seem a lot more grand than it actually was. No one really knows the extent of how close it was to happening. There were a bunch of like ending credits to this, right? Like they always do for biopics. It's complete bullshit. I mean, they changed the names first of all. None of these people actually existed. They're based on different people with wavering like a truth to it. How much is hearsay? How much is implication? But it's really tough to know. And then the last thing is the entire movie is about what's the name? Bert Berendsen, Valerie, and what's John David Washington's character? What's his name?
Let me just I'm gonna look it up real quick because I can't remember off the top of my head. There were so many characters.
I know there were way too much.
Harold.
Harold.
That's right. Yeah, so it's those people. They did not exist. I don't even think they have a basis for anything. No one got murdered. General Meekins, Taylor Swift didn't get murdered. So it's like, okay, I get it. It seems fun, right? But how do you start a movie? It's not like based on a true story. That's how you get away with this stuff. But when you say much of what you're seeing actually happened, this is just complete BS.
It's fiction.
I fundamentally hate biopics for this reason because you get an emotional connection with the movie by saying, oh, a lot of this stuff is true. When no, it's completely made up and you made it up yourself. It's like, okay, it's Hollywood. You're allowed your artistic license, but don't advertise it as something that's not. And why are you making some of these decisions when there are more interesting creative decisions to be made? It's just infuriating.
And that, folks, is the teaser trailer for when we review Blonde.
Yeah.
Yeah, Blonde's coming to the Unqualified Film Bros podcast next month, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of creative liberties taken with the history of this plot, of these, characters who they're based on. I think one of the ways that Russell kind of alleviates that a little bit, maybe once it's too late, is the side-by-side of the two speeches given by the real-life General Smedley, I think his name was.
That's completely duplicitous. That's completely duplicitous. At the end, he says what happens to all these people who do not exist. And then he puts the actual speech that they copied, that De Niro copied. First of all, Smedley did not even talk to them.
I think what may have better served this film is not to say a lot of this really happened, but to say based on true events.
But that's my point. Why are you acting like most of this stuff happened when you know damn well that it didn't?
Well, that's my
And to
point.
do that at
If you
the end, it's
say
duplicitous. I
say
fundamentally
based
hate
on
it.
true events, you give yourself a lot more leeway with how much of the truth you actually have to use.
There's a big difference between basing something and saying most of what you're about to see
Right,
actually
and
happened.
that's why I'm
These are just
saying
a
it was a
lie.
disservice to use that language over what I
Yeah.
suggested.
But at the end too, I think they do it at the end. They act like these people actually existed and tell us what happened. It's like no one ever faced charges.
Well,
McGuire died
to
because
be
he knew too
fair, and
much.
I know
McGuire died of pneumonia. He was a real person. He was the only real person they fucking lied when he died about.
I know
That's
this is a really shitty comparison,
Oh
but
God.
Animal House says what happened to all those characters after the movie happened. It never
yes,
claims to be based on real
but
events, or
that's
most
a
of this stuff is
fictional
true,
story.
but
It's completely fine if it's a fictional story.
well,
You're
this
like,
film,
it's
the
that
bottom
most of
line,
these things actually happened.
the bottom line is that this is a work of fiction.
Yeah, but it's acting like it's not, just like Blonde does.
Well,
That's upsetting to me.
We will get into Blonde, and I'm sure all of us will be as upset as you are right now, Ben. But yeah, I mean, this film. I mean, you guys want to get into final thoughts? I feel like we've said a lot about this film.
Yeah,
Sure.
my final thoughts have already been said. I would like to scream at David Russell and slap him.
You want me to go, George? I can go.
Sure.
Yeah, it's like I also had an issue with the like, especially at the end when I realized that Dylan Beck was not a real person, and like that makes sense, right? We probably would have heard about him at least once in American history if he actually existed. Like I didn't even hear of whatever the hell his name. What
Smedley, I think.
Smedley? Yeah, I had never even heard of that guy. So, but my point being, I also had a huge gripe with the beginning of the film saying most of what you're about to see is true, and then sure, like the business plot is like kind of a thing, but it just became this over the top fantastical story with almost no basis in historical accuracy, and that's fine, right? You can tell that story, you can make it bigger than it is, but again, calling it factual, essentially factual, is what really bothered me, because not because of like misinformation or anything like that. It just, I'm coming into this movie and sitting down for this movie, then expecting to go back and look up the events and be like, oh, I recognize the Voses, or I recognize Dylan Beck, or I recognize Harold Woodsman, or something, or whoever it is. They don't exist. I can't do that. And it just felt like there was a miss. It was missed.
A part of me wishes that I had stuck around to the end of the credits just to see if there's the disclaimer. This is a work of fiction. Any relation to persons living or dead is purely coincidental.
Taylor Swift was not harmed in the making of this movie.
Just like Bad Bunny wasn't harmed in the making of Bullet Train.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
sorry. I mean, just final thought. It was like when you have something that even has some basis in history, like the business plot and what this is based off of, either go with the accuracy or make it complete fiction, but just don't claim that it's something that it's not. David O. Russell.
I just to follow up on that. This is for you, David O. Russell. I don't like my intelligence being insulted. Okay.
Ben's looking directly to camera for this. This is fantastic.
If you want to make a PowerPoint 15 minutes before its due and put a bunch of pretty colors on it, you can.
We've all been there.
But don't act like it actually happened. All right. That's my final thought.
Yeah, I mean, I've said a lot of what I feel about this movie. I love murder mysteries. I love murder mystery comedies. I love comedy thrillers. This movie tries to be all of that, and there were plenty of moments when I, found something to be very funny in the moment and laughed in the theater, and I had a good time watching this movie. So I'm giving it a good score. But at the same time, after this discussion, I do in fact feel lied to about the true nature of how much of this is true. Again, pacing issues, screenplay issues, and just not reaching the ceiling. And there was another movie that I wanted to do with you guys, but didn't end up getting to on the schedule, and that was See How They Run, another period murder mystery comedy that does reach its ceiling. It was fantastic.
Done that one instead.
Well, maybe we'll sub it in for Blonde. We've only talked about
No,
Blonde
we
for
have
the
to
last
do. No, we have
for the
to
last
do Blonde.
3 weeks. Oh yeah, Ben's
Oh yeah,
watching it in
Ben's watching it in
stages.
chapters.
There's
Ben's
no
on
way you
chapter
can
3 of
fit it in one
12.
sitting.
Is it broken up like the Snyder cut where you get like part 1, part 2, part 3?
Yeah, I'm doing it myself. I'm just putting up a flashcard.
I look forward to hearing all of your thoughts when we do Blonde.
Ben's going 15 minutes at a time with Blonde.
Yeah.
So that's 11.
Marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, how long is it?
It's
Like
2:46.
4 hours. Yeah,
Oh,
46
geez.
minutes.
So start now. Maybe we'll be finished in a month by the time we do the episode.
Mhm.
All right, so we're gonna change gears here for the last part of the episode. We're gonna do some rankings, which we haven't done in a while. We're gonna do top 5. That's right, 5, because there are only 3 of us here tonight. If all 4 of us were here, we'd do 3. We're expanding because there are only 3 of us. I've over-explained this. Top 5 Christian Bale performances. We're not doing top 5 Christian Bale movies. We're not doing favorite Christian Bale movies. We're doing our top 5 based on what we've seen Christian Bale performances. Let's start with Ben.
All right. Let me get my list, make sure I have everything correct. The first one I already know is.
Wait, are you doing 5 to 1 or 1 to 5?
Oh, yeah. Let's start with 5. All right, number 5 would be Alfred Borden / Fallon. Spoiler, sort of. In The Prestige. I think it's not a role that he needs to do too much, but he's very, very good. Especially playing 2 different people. The intimate scenes between his lovers is probably some of his best acting in the movie. Number 4 is Trevor Resnick in The Machinist. Not only was it a good performance, but the guy literally almost killed himself by dropping like 68 pounds to like 100 pounds or whatever. Literally a walking skeleton. His doctor said he couldn't lose any more weight or else he would die.
He did that movie right before Batman Begins, too.
Did that movie right before. He put in a phenomenal performance too, which I don't know how you do when you're eating literally like a spoonful of tuna and water for 8 months or whatever. But it's a really incredible performance. Really depressing movie, but you got to watch it just for him. Number 3, one of my personal favorites, Patrick Bateman, American Psycho.
I really thought you were going to go American Psycho 1.
I thought about it, but the next 2 up, I have to agree. Even if I like American Psycho, that's definitely my favorite Patrick Bateman Christian Bale movie. The other 2 performances I think are his best performances of all time. But yeah, he's very good at Patrick Bateman. Probably the first big role that he had. It's a fantastic movie. It's billed as a horror movie. It's not really a horror movie. It's like a psychological thriller / satire. Fantastic satire of the 80s. But you really got to read into it. Number 2, Deqlin for The Fighter. That is
Yeah.
probably one of his best roles. A real person, an actual real person, where they actually studied his life, um, and put that in the movie, which is apparently new these days. Um, but I mean, it's a very good role. He's very, very good. And then number one, there was only one choice for me. It was Dick Cheney, Vice. He completely transforms for that role. Like I love Patrick Bateman, but that is some phenomenal acting. Sure, there's prosthetics there. He did gain weight too. He's a method actor. He loves to do that stuff, gaining and losing weight. Um, but I mean, the performance is just so good in that. Even if I don't think the movie is as good, I think he should have won the Oscar for that. Those are my top five. No
Max?
Batman.
You want me to go, George? I can
Sure.
go. I am gonna go. I'm gonna start with number 5 as well. I'm gonna go with Bruce Wayne in The Dark Knight. I thought he was great in that. I mean, you could kind of pick any of them. I mean, Begins you could pick because of what he did
His performance
coming off of The
good.
Machinist,
Yeah.
like just having to go what he had to go through physically. He was good. But yeah, number 4, I'm going with The Prestige. I love The Prestige. I think it's a great movie. A lot of fun. Number 3, I am gonna go with. Ooh, sorry. Sorry about
Max,
that.
come on.
Shut up. I'm going with The Fighter. I loved it for the same reasons that Ben did. Number 2, Big Short. Uh, Not only is it a great film, but he plays another quirky character that has a funky eye, and that's always fun. And then number 1, also got to go with Vice. I mean, just a stunning performance from Christian Bale in Vice.
Vice is not my number one.
Okay, that's fine.
Um, I'm gonna go with my gut for all of these.
It's gonna be
Uh,
John Connor, isn't it?
what?
It's gonna be John Connor from Terminator Salvation, isn't it?
Nah, man, it's gonna be Bert Berendsen from Amsterdam.
I think Gore is going to be on this.
Cool.
Gore is gonna be on the list. Gore is gonna be number 5.
That's
Um,
fair. It's fun.
he's the best part of that movie. He has so much fun. He becomes the character, delivers a great performance. Damn shame he was a one-off villain because he deserved more as a character and as an actor. Number 4, as I refresh my list here, number 4 is going to be Michael Burry in The Big Short. Um, I loved his performance in that movie, and talk about a stacked cast with who else is in The Big Short. It's an Adam McKay movie, so that automatically makes it a win for me. Number 3 is going to be Bruce Wayne in The Dark Knight. You could say Batman Begins. I wouldn't say The Dark Knight Rises would be in my top 5 Bale performances. Batman Begins is probably just outside my top 5. He's the best Batman there's ever been, in my opinion. So I think it would be remiss of me not to include him on here. Ben.
Well, I don't think it's one of
Whoa.
the best performances. He's good in
Fair.
everything.
And this is me. I should have said this at the beginning. This is me almost shockingly low on Christian Bale movies. I have not seen The Machinist. I've not seen The
He's not an
Fighter.
American Psycho.
I have not seen American Psycho. Thank you, Ben. I plan to rectify all of this very,
You should
very
definitely
soon.
watch The Fighter.
I'm going to.
Yeah.
Haven't gotten to it yet.
But that's the first of those you should watch.
The
Okay.
Fighter's really good.
Duly noted. I will. If I may continue.
Wow.
Number 2, I'm going to go with, pausing for dramatic effect, and not because I had something in my throat just now. Excuse me. Number 2, I'm going to go with Dick Cheney in Vice. You guys have already said it. Transforms for the role. absolutely outstanding performance, deserving of
Yeah.
every accolade he got. And he became Dick Cheney in a film filled with actors who became their characters. Special shout out Steve Carell as Donald Rumsfeld. He's
And
just
Sam
crazy in that
Rockwell.
movie.
Sam Rockwell is George
Yep.
Bush.
I love
So
Sam
good.
Rockwell. See How They Run if you haven't seen it. Sam Rockwell stars in that. He's outstanding. And the number one is going to be Alfred Borden in The Prestige.
Mm.
The dual role, the intimate scenes, the sort of almost mania of his character. Well, not as much as the mania of Hugh Jackman's character, obviously, but few characters reach that level. Yeah, The Prestige. It's an all-time great movie. One of my 2 or 3 favorite Nolan films, and Christian
That's
Bale
fun.
gives his best performance in that movie. So that wraps up our Christian Bale rankings. We want to know what Deqlin's are. We want to know what yours are. Hit us up in the comments below. Hit us up on social media. In the meantime, you can go see Amsterdam in movie theaters. Ben's going to advise you against it. I'm going to laugh it off, and then we're going to end the episode. But yeah, Amsterdam's playing in movie theaters now. No word yet when we're going to see it on a streaming service. I'd probably see it again. I had fun in the movie theater. Ben didn't.
I'd wait.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason not to wait for streaming on this one, but I would see it in a theater. I wouldn't see it in a theater again, but I would see it in a theater once. Good night.
Bye.
We'll see you guys next week when we talk about Bros. We'll have fun with that one. Billy Eichner's great in it. All right. Good night.